This constituency, like nearly all of them in the northeast, voted to leave. But this constituency, like nearly all of them in the northeast, is represented by a member of parliament who is fanatical about forcing you to vote again in a second referendum and overturning the result and making us vote Remain. If you want to see the difference between the smug faces of those in Westminster who feel so pleased and proud that they've managed to stop us leaving effectively on the 31st of October, to stop us in the short term. Don't worry, sir, we're going to get there, all right. Who feel so smug and content, they've even stopped us in the short term having a general election. They think in London SW1 they're doing a great job. When I suggest they come to Sedgefield, I suggest they come out to the country where they will discover that we are disgusted by their behaviour. The Labour Party promised in their 2017 manifesto they would not just respect the result of the referendum, but they would, if they got into government, deliver on the result of that referendum. And where are we today? We saw Emily Thornberry. Well, you can boo. Richard spent an hour sitting next to her. I mean... So the Thornberry policy, and it's brilliant, isn't it? Brilliant. A Labour government will negotiate a new deal, put it to the British people in a second referendum, and then campaign against it. Work that out. I mean, you couldn't make it up, could you? Then we had Mr. Corbyn yesterday at the TUC telling us that a Labour government will now, despite all their pledges and promises to the contrary, a Labour government will now hold a second referendum and give us the choice between Remain and what he calls a credible leave option. What he means is it'll be Remain or a version of Mrs May's appalling new European treaty that rightly was voted down 3 times by Parliament. Corbyn, if he wins the next election, doesn't even want to give us the option in a second referendum of genuinely breaking free. And that to me is a complete betrayal of 5 million Labour voters who voted for them in 2017, believing they deliver on the referendum. To be in no doubt in these northern constituencies, most of which have been Labour forever, be in no doubt that we will be in an all-out political fight with a Labour Party who've broken their word, lied to the people, betrayed many of their most traditional voters. We are in an all-out political war with the Labour Party, and quite right too. And what of the Conservative Party? Well, thank goodness for the Brexit Party, because if we weren't here... Is that the best you can do for the Brexit Party? Are you ready? It's all right, they've woken up now, we're okay. And what of the Conservative Party? Well, we had 3 years of Theresa May as Prime Minister, who doesn't just go down as the worst Prime Minister in history, she also goes down as the most dishonest and duplicitous Prime Minister in history as well. And if it wasn't If it wasn't for the Brexit Party, she'd probably still be Prime Minister. So Boris Johnson came in on the back of our spectacular success in the European elections. And Boris began by injecting a bit of energy and a bit of optimism into the job, much needed, and indeed saying many of the right things, indeed parroting much of what we'd said during the European elections. I thought, well, you know, imitation is quite a nice form of flattery in a way. But Boris Johnson, for all the bravado, for all the we will leave on the 31st of October, do you remember? Do or die? Gosh, I thought this chap looks pretty good, you know. Even said he'd be prepared to die in a ditch, not to extend. And yet, what is it we're now beginning to hear from Boris Johnson? We're hearing that it is now the overwhelming priority of this country to get a withdrawal agreement, by which he means Mrs. May's withdrawal agreement with a few changed words around the backstop. Even without the backstop, that withdrawal agreement is a new European treaty, binding in international law, under which we will never become a free nation. We will never become a genuine independent democracy. And if Boris Johnson carries on down that route of trying to force through that withdrawal agreement, of trying to tie us to European rule books with no say, for goodness knows how long to come, that will be. He might think he's clever. He might stand up and say, I've delivered Brexit, if he forces it through the House of Commons, but it will be nothing more than Brexit in name only, and nothing less than a betrayal of...
We will make America great again.